My name is Jessica, and at 32 years old, I watched as my stepsister Chloe destroyed what I thought was my perfect marriage to Alexander, the CEO of our billion-dollar furniture empire. After a year of divorce proceedings, we sat in the final settlement meeting when Chloe tossed $200 at me. "Book a cab to your parents' place. Goodbye," she sneered. That was when my lawyer burst out laughing. If you are watching this right now, I would love to know where you are from. Drop a like and subscribe if you have ever been underestimated, because what happened next changed everything. I grew up in a modest neighborhood in Boston with just my mom. She worked 2 jobs to keep a roof over our heads after my dad left when I was just 3 years old. We never had much, but Mom made sure I never felt like I was missing out. She sewed my clothes, helped with school projects, and taught me to appreciate what we had. Our tiny apartment became a canvas for my creativity. I would rearrange our sparse furniture and decorate with items I found at yard sales. Even as a child, I had an eye for design and making spaces feel like home. Everything changed when I turned 12. Mom met James, a widower with a 10-year-old daughter named Chloe. After a whirlwind romance, they married, and suddenly our family of 2 became 4. James had a comfortable 3-bedroom house in a nicer part of town, so we moved in with them. I was excited to have a sister, someone to share secrets with and stay up late talking. Chloe had different ideas. From the day we moved in, she made it clear she did not want to share her father or her home. The first night, I found her going through my things, claiming she was just getting to know me better. But the next day, my favorite bracelet, a gift from my grandmother, mysteriously disappeared. When I confronted her, she denied taking it, and James suggested I must have lost it during the move. That became a pattern. Chloe would take my things, deny it, and somehow make me look like the problem. When I got a new sweater for my birthday, Chloe would suddenly need to borrow it for a special occasion. It would return with a stain or tear. My homework would go missing the night before it was due. Friends who came to visit me would leave as her friends instead. Mom tried to mediate, but she was so grateful to James for giving us stability that she often encouraged me to try harder with Chloe. "She lost her mother," Mom would remind me. "She needs extra understanding." So I gave in time after time, hoping eventually Chloe would see me as family. High school brought temporary relief. I threw myself into academics and extracurricular activities. Staying away from home as much as possible, I joined the yearbook committee, art club, and business club, discovering I had talents in both creative design and strategic thinking. My guidance counselor encouraged me to apply for scholarships, and I won enough to attend the state university with a double major in business administration and interior design. College was the fresh start I needed. I flourished in the design program, earning praise from professors for my innovative approaches to furniture functionality. During my junior year, I took an advanced design course focused on sustainable materials. That was where I met Alexander Thompson. Alexander sat next to me on the first day of class. Tall, with dark wavy hair and intense green eyes, he stood out not just for his looks, but for his passion. While most students were taking the class to fulfill a requirement, Alexander had a vision. He wanted to revolutionize the furniture industry with eco-friendly, beautiful pieces that everyday people could afford. "The problem with sustainable furniture," he told me during our first conversation, "is that it is either ugly, uncomfortable, or costs more than a car. I want to change that." I was drawn to his ambition and shared my own ideas about designs that could be both practical and stunning. We started meeting after class to sketch concepts, our heads bent together over notebooks in the campus coffee shop. He had the business insight while I had the design instinct. We complemented each other perfectly. By the end of that semester, we were dating. By senior year, we were inseparable. Alexander shared stories of his childhood surrounded by his father's failed business ventures. "My dad had good ideas but poor execution. I learned what not to do by watching him," he explained. I told him about growing up with little and how it taught me to see the beauty and potential in cast-off items. Meanwhile, Chloe was attending a private college paid for by her father. She would call home with stories about parties and shopping trips while I worked part-time jobs to cover my expenses beyond the scholarship. Whenever I visited home, she would make comments about my quaint little major and how I would probably end up decorating model homes in the suburbs. Alexander proposed the weekend after graduation. We were hiking in the mountains, and at the summit, he pulled out a small wooden box he had carved himself. Inside was a simple but elegant ring. "I cannot afford much yet," he said, "but one day I will give you everything you deserve." I did not care about the size of the ring. I cared that he understood me, believed in me, and shared my dreams. When we called our families to announce the engagement, my mother was thrilled. James offered polite congratulations. Chloe said nothing until she called me privately the next day. "So, you found yourself a dreamer," she said with a laugh. "Good luck building castles in the air with him." Her words did not bother me. For the first time in my life, I felt secure in who I was and what I wanted. Alexander and I had plans, and nothing Chloe said could diminish that. Little did I know that her dismissal of our relationship was just the beginning of a much larger pattern that would eventually threaten everything we built. Alexander and I married 6 months after graduation in a simple ceremony at a local park. Instead of an expensive honeymoon, we put our wedding gift money towards starting our furniture business. My mother gave us her entire savings of $5,000 as a wedding present, despite my protests. "I have been saving this for your future since the day you were born," she insisted. "This is exactly what it was meant for." We rented a small apartment and converted the attached garage into our workshop. During the day, I worked at a local design firm while Alexander took a sales job at a furniture store to learn the industry from the inside. Evenings and weekends were dedicated to our dream. I would sketch designs while Alexander researched sustainable materials and built relationships with potential suppliers. Our first pieces were created from reclaimed wood we salvaged from construction sites. Alexander would negotiate with contractors to take discarded materials, and we would transform them into coffee tables, bookshelves, and dining chairs. I developed a signature style that combined rustic elements with clean, modern lines. Each piece told a story through its materials while remaining functional and timeless. We faced countless setbacks. Our first delivery truck, a used panel van Alexander bought for $800, broke down on the way to our first client. We spent $3,000 we could not afford on a specialized woodworking tool that turned out to be defective. A batch of eco-friendly finish ruined an entire collection when it failed to dry properly. After each disappointment, we would sit on our apartment floor surrounded by sketches and samples and remind each other why we started this journey. "We are not just making furniture," Alexander would say. "We are creating homes, places where families will gather, children will grow, and memories will be made." 18 months into our venture, I created a modular shelving system that changed everything. The design allowed customers to customize their storage solutions without specialized tools. The pieces could be arranged in countless configurations and expanded over time as needs changed. I used a combination of reclaimed wood and sustainable bamboo with hidden joinery that made the pieces look like they were floating on the wall. Alexander took photos of my prototype and created a simple website showcasing the design. The morning after the site went live, we woke to find hundreds of emails in our inbox. A popular design blogger had shared our shelving system, calling it the perfect marriage of sustainability, functionality, and beauty. Within weeks, we had more orders than we could fulfill from our garage. Alexander negotiated with a local woodworking shop to use their facilities during off hours. I quit my day job to focus on our company full-time. We hired 2 part-time assistants, both recent graduates from my design program who believed in our mission. As demand grew, Alexander focused on the business operations while I continued refining our designs and developing new pieces. We made a conscious decision for Alexander to be the face of the company. He had the charisma and business vocabulary to impress investors and clients. I preferred working behind the scenes, creating the products that were becoming our signature. Thompson Design House expanded from shelving to full furniture collections. We moved operations to a small warehouse and hired our first full-time employees. Alexander secured a meeting with a national home goods retailer who wanted to feature our coffee tables in their stores. The initial order was large enough for us to invest in better equipment and a larger production space. Through it all, Alexander and I remained equal partners. Though he held the title of CEO for public purposes, we made every significant decision together. Late nights in our office, we would discuss strategy over takeout food, debating the merits of rapid expansion versus controlled growth. We agreed that maintaining quality and our sustainable ethos was non-negotiable, even if it meant growing more slowly. What few people knew, including our families, was that our legal structure reflected this partnership. On the advice of our business attorney, we had set up the company with a complex ownership arrangement. While Alexander was the public CEO, I actually held 51% of the voting shares. This was partly a protective measure in case one of us became incapacitated, but also acknowledged my role as the creative engine of our success. Alexander had insisted on this structure, saying, "Your designs are what make us special. This protects both of us and the integrity of what we are building." By our 5th anniversary, Thompson Design House had grown to a $30 million company with 60 employees. We had expanded to 3 product lines sold in stores nationwide. Our little garage operation now occupied a renovated former textile mill where we combined manufacturing with elegant showrooms. We finally bought our dream home, a Victorian fixer-upper that I spent 2 years restoring and furnishing with our own pieces. Through these years of growth, Chloe remained on the periphery of our lives. She would appear at family holidays, always with a new boyfriend and stories of her glamorous life in New York, working in fashion, public relations. She would make comments about how lucky I was that Alexander had turned my little hobby into a real business. I would smile and change the subject, not bothering to correct her assumption that Alexander was the driving force behind our success. What I failed to notice was how her interest shifted as our company grew more prominent. Her dismissive comments about our quaint little business gave way to curious questions about our revenue and expansion plans. When Alexander was featured in a business magazine as a rising star entrepreneur, Chloe called to congratulate him directly, bypassing me entirely. These were warning signs I should have heeded, but I was too consumed with our growing business and too accustomed to Chloe's behavior to recognize the danger approaching. 7 years into building our company and our marriage, Chloe re-entered our lives in a way I never anticipated. She called me in tears one February evening. Her voice cracked as she explained that her boyfriend of 3 years had been cheating on her with his assistant. She had quit her job in a dramatic confrontation at the office and now had nowhere to go. "The lease on my apartment is up next month anyway," she sobbed. "I just cannot face staying in the city right now. Could I stay with you guys for a few weeks until I figure things out?" Despite our history, my heart went out to her. I knew the pain of betrayal from childhood abandonments, though not from a romantic partner. Alexander was hesitant when I suggested offering Chloe our guest house, a converted carriage house behind our main home. "Are you sure?" he asked. "You and Chloe have never exactly been close." "She is family," I replied, "and she is hurting. Maybe this is our chance to heal the past." Looking back, I realize how naive that hope was. Chloe arrived with 6 suitcases and a bitter attitude. The first few days, she barely left the guest house, ordering delivery food and watching reality television. I checked on her daily, bringing home cooked meals and offering to help her update her resume. She accepted my kindness with minimal gratitude, but seemed genuinely broken by her breakup. After about 2 weeks, she emerged from her shell and began showing interest in our lives. She asked for a tour of our offices and manufacturing facility. I was thrilled by what seemed like genuine curiosity about my work for the first time. She complimented my designs and asked thoughtful questions about our creative process. "You are actually really talented, Jessica," she said, sounding surprised as she examined one of my latest chair prototypes. I had no idea. Her validation should not have mattered to me after all these years, but some part of me still craved approval from the stepsister who had dismissed me for so long. I began inviting her to dinner with us, regularly eager to strengthen our newfound connection. The first sign of trouble came about a month into her stay. I returned home early from a meeting with a supplier to find Chloe and Alexander in deep conversation in our kitchen. They fell silent when I entered, exchanging a quick glance before Alexander announced he needed to return some work calls. "What were you guys talking about?" I asked Chloe after he left. "Oh, just some ideas I had for expanding your social media presence, she said casually. "Did you know I handled all the Instagram marketing for my last company?" Alexander seemed really interested in my approach. I brushed off the momentary unease I felt. After all, we could use help with our social media strategy, which had never been my strong suit. Over the next few weeks, I noticed Chloe making more efforts with her appearance when Alexander was home. She would wear form-fitting workout clothes to do yoga in the garden when she knew he would be passing by. Her casual touches on his arm during conversation lingered a beat too long. Alexander began working later and later. When I called the office one evening at 8:30, his assistant said he had left 2 hours earlier. He arrived home at 11 Hunquak, claiming he had been at a business dinner with potential investors. His cologne smelled different, stronger, as if recently applied. "Why did your assistant think you left at 6:30?" I asked. "She must have been confused," he replied, not meeting my eyes. I told her I was heading to the dinner directly from the office. I found myself checking his phone when he was in the shower. The rational part of me knew this was wrong, a violation of trust, but my instincts were screaming that something was off. One morning I saw a text from Chloe. "Last night was exactly what I needed. Thanks for listening." When confronted, Alexander laughed it off. She was upset about her ex again. "We talked on the back patio while you were working on those new designs in your studio. You were so in the zone. I did not want to disturb you." I wanted to believe him. Our marriage had always been solid, built on mutual respect and shared dreams. But the knot in my stomach would not dissolve. Chloe's few weeks stretched into 3 months. She began attending industry events as my guest, charming our investors and partners with her outgoing personality and fashion sense. Several times I noticed her and Alexander in animated conversations across crowded rooms, their body language excluding others from their private exchange. Then came the business trip to Chicago. We were opening a new showroom, and both Alexander and I planned to attend. The day before our departure, I developed a severe case of food poisoning. Alexander insisted on going without me. "The investors are expecting us," he said. "One of us has to be there." Chloe offered to nurse me back to health. "You rest, sis. I will make sure you have everything you need." The next 3 days passed in a blur of sickness and sleep. Chloe brought me tea and toast, checked my temperature, and kept the house quiet. I was genuinely touched by her care. On the 4th day, feeling somewhat recovered, I decided to check my work emails. I opened my laptop to find that Alexander had left his email logged in. A message from our Chicago hotel caught my eye. "Thank you for upgrading to our executive suite with complimentary champagne for 2. We hope you and Miss Cooper enjoyed your stay." My hands trembled as I pulled up our credit card statement online. There were charges for a romantic dinner at Chicago's most exclusive restaurant, 2 theater tickets, and a late-night room service order, all for 2 people. When I called the hotel directly, the cheerful receptionist confirmed that Mr. Thompson had indeed stayed with his wife, Miss Cooper, Chloe's last name. I confronted her immediately, still weak from my illness, but fueled by a burning rage. "Did you go to Chicago with Alexander?" Chloe did not even try to deny it. A slow smile spread across her face as she examined her manicure. "I wondered how long it would take you to figure it out. Yes, I went with him, and it was not the first time we have been together." "How could you do this after everything I have done for you?" I demanded. She laughed, the sound brittle and cold. "Oh, Jessica, always so naive. Did you really think someone like Alexander would be satisfied with someone like you forever? You were useful when he was building the company, but now he needs someone who enhances his image, who can move in high society circles. Someone like me." I was still reeling from this confrontation when Alexander returned home. Instead of shame or apology, he exhibited only irritation at being discovered. "It just happened," he said dismissively. "Chloe understands me in ways you never have. She sees my vision for taking the company global." "My designs built this company," I reminded him, finding strength despite my physical weakness. "Our shared vision, our shared work." Alexander's laugh was eerily similar to Chloe's. "Your designs? They were a good starting point, but my business acumen made them successful. Anyone can draw pictures of furniture, Jessica. Building an empire takes something special." In that moment, I saw clearly how thoroughly he had revised our history, diminishing my contributions to justify his betrayal. The man standing before me was unrecognizable from the passionate, principled partner I had married. Success and ambition had corrupted him, or perhaps revealed who he had been all along. "I want you both out of my house," I said quietly. Alexander's expression hardened. "Actually, I think you will be the one leaving. The house is in my name, remember, for tax purposes, and the company too. As CEO, I control everything." "We are equal partners," I protested, "legally and in every other way." "Check the paperwork," he suggested with a smirk. "Things might not be as you remember them." That night, I moved into a hotel, too devastated to argue and needing space to think. I would soon discover that Alexander had been planning this betrayal, methodically altering company documents and positioning himself as the sole creative force behind our success. What he did not know was that some papers cannot be changed, and some betrayals come with unexpected consequences. The weeks following my discovery of the affair were the darkest of my life. I moved from the hotel into a small one-bedroom apartment that cost nearly half my available savings. Alexander had frozen my access to our joint accounts and company funds, claiming I was a flight risk who might damage the company out of spite. Meanwhile, he and Chloe flaunted their relationship publicly. They attended industry galas together, gave joint interviews about the exciting new direction of Thompson Design House, and moved my personal belongings to storage without my consent. Chloe began redecorating our home, replacing the furniture I had designed with gaudy, expensive pieces from our competitors. My first lawyer, a family friend who specialized in real estate law, was quickly outmatched by Alexander's aggressive legal team. They presented documentation showing that I had signed over my creative rights to the company years ago and that Alexander held sole ownership. When I insisted these documents were forgeries, or that I had signed them under false pretenses, the lawyer gently suggested I might be misremembering due to emotional trauma. Depression enveloped me like a thick fog. I stopped eating regularly and spent days in bed replaying our relationship in my mind, questioning every memory. Had Alexander been using me all along? Was our entire marriage a business arrangement in his eyes? The betrayal by both my husband and stepsister reopened childhood wounds of abandonment and rejection. My mother called daily, offering to let me move back home, but I could not bear the thought of returning to my parents' house in defeat. James, my stepfather, made matters worse by suggesting that perhaps I had neglected Alexander by focusing too much on work, creating an opening for Chloe's advances. His defense of his daughter was yet another betrayal. 6 weeks into this downward spiral, my former assistant from Thompson Design House, Zoe, reached out. She had quit shortly after my departure, unable to stomach the hostile takeover of the company culture. "You need to fight back," she urged over coffee in my sparse apartment. "Alexander is running the company into the ground. He is cutting corners on materials, outsourcing production to factories with questionable labor practices, and alienating the artisans who made your designs special. Everything you built is being dismantled." Her words pierced through my fog of self-pity. This was not just about my marriage or personal humiliation. It was about the company we had built, the employees who believed in our mission, and the principles I had fought to uphold. "But what can I do?" I asked. "He has all the power and resources." "Not necessarily," Zoe replied, a hint of mystery in her voice. "You need a better lawyer, someone who specializes in both divorce and corporate law. I might know someone." That someone was Patricia Winters, a formidable attorney in her mid-40s with a reputation for handling complex, high-asset divorces with business entanglements. Her consultation fee alone was $800, nearly emptying my checking account. But the moment she reviewed my case, I knew she was worth every penny. Unlike my previous lawyer, Patricia did not accept the documents Alexander presented at face value. She dispatched her team to search public records, examine the original incorporation papers, and trace every legal filing in our company's history. "Something does not add up," she said during our second meeting. "The ownership structure changed 3 times in the past 2 years, each time reducing your stake. But the signatures on these amendments do not quite match your earlier signatures. And there is another issue. Do you remember the original operating agreement you both signed when forming the company?" I strained to recall the details from 8 years ago. Vaguely. Alexander handled most of the legal paperwork. I focused on design and production, but I know we set it up as equal partners. Patricia slid a document across the table. "More than equal, according to the original filing, which cannot be altered without signatures from both parties and witnesses. You hold 51% of the voting shares. Alexander holds 49%. I stared at her in disbelief. That cannot be right. Alexander would never have agreed to give me controlling interest. "Actually, it was his idea," Patricia said, showing me a note in Alexander's handwriting attached to the original document. His comment here states that since your designs were the cornerstone of the business, you should have final say in any dispute to protect the creative integrity of the company. The memory flooded back. We had been sitting with our first lawyer, a kind, older gentleman who had warned us about business partnerships dissolving under pressure. Alexander had insisted on giving me the slight majority share, saying it would ensure our company never strayed from its founding principles, even if we disagreed on strategy. "Alexander must have forgotten about this arrangement," I whispered, "or assumed he had changed it along with the other documents." "This is our leverage," Patricia explained, "but we need to be strategic about how and when we reveal it. In the meantime, we need to document everything Alexander and your stepsister are doing to damage the company and violate its founding principles. Over the next 4 months, Patricia built our case methodically while I rebuilt my strength. With Zoe's help, I connected with loyal employees still at Thompson Design House who secretly provided information about Alexander's mismanagement. He had replaced quality materials with cheaper alternatives while maintaining premium prices. He had canceled our partnerships with sustainable forestry programs. Most damaging, he had hired a different designer to create pieces remarkably similar to my upcoming collection, which he planned to release under his sole creative direction. During this time, Alexander offered insultingly low settlement proposals, each one accompanied by thinly veiled threats. "You should take this now," his lawyers would advise. "Mr. Thompson is being generous considering your limited contributions to the company's success." The lowest point came when I learned that Alexander and Chloe had become engaged barely 6 months after our separation. They held a lavish party at our former home, inviting industry leaders and press to celebrate. The business journals praised Alexander's bold new vision and referred to Chloe as his partner in both life and creative direction. In my darkest moments, Patricia became not just my attorney, but my champion. "They think they have won," she would remind me. "That gives us the advantage of surprise. Keep documenting. Keep gathering allies. Your moment will come." And she was right. Alexander's arrogance led to carelessness. He began using company funds for personal expenses, a clear violation of corporate governance. He fired several long-tenured employees who questioned his decisions, creating potential wrongful termination claims. Most significantly, he attempted to sell company assets to fund a new manufacturing facility without proper board approval. Meanwhile, I slowly reconnected with my creative spark. In my small apartment, I began sketching again, developing new designs that represented my personal evolution through adversity. I met quietly with a few trusted former clients who had been disappointed with the company's new direction. Without making promises, I planted seeds about my eventual return to the industry. By the time Alexander's lawyers called to schedule a final settlement conference, Patricia had compiled an ironclad case. We had evidence of document fraud, misappropriation of company funds, intellectual property theft, and breach of fiduciary duty. Most importantly, we had the original incorporation documents proving my majority ownership. "Are you ready for this?" Patricia asked the night before the meeting. "Once we play this card, there is no going back. Alexander and Chloe will be exposed, but so will you. The industry will know everything." I thought about the company we had built from nothing, about the customers who had believed in our vision, and about the young designer I had once been, full of hope and creativity. "I am ready," I said, "not for revenge, but for restoration." The stage was set for a confrontation that would determine not just the financial terms of our divorce, but the very soul of the company we had created together. With Patricia's guidance, I began methodically rebuilding both my confidence and my position. The first step was securing my financial independence. I took a consulting job with a small, sustainable architecture firm, advising on interior elements and furniture selection. The work was far below my capabilities, but it provided steady income and reconnected me with my design roots without the pressure of running a company. On Patricia's advice, I maintained a low profile publicly. When industry acquaintances asked about the divorce, I offered minimal comments about irreconcilable differences and wishing. Alexander continued success. This restraint confused Alexander, who had expected public accusations and emotional outbursts he could use to paint me as unstable. "He is waiting for you to implode," Patricia observed after one particularly provocative interview, where Alexander claimed I had struggled with the pressures of growth and needed to step away for personal reasons. "Every day you remain calm and professional frustrates him more." Behind this composed facade, we were assembling a powerful coalition. Daniel Foster, our company's original investor, who had been marginalized by Alexander, became a crucial ally. As a board member, he had access to financial reports showing concerning trends in the company's performance despite Alexander's public claims of record growth. "The numbers do not lie," Daniel told me during a discreet meeting at Patricia's office. "Customer returns are up 40%. Repeat business is down. The core clientele who appreciated the sustainable materials and craftsmanship are abandoning the brand." One by one, I reconnected with key people from the company's history. our first production manager, now running his own woodworking studio, the sustainable materials supplier who had been replaced by cheaper alternatives, the marketing director who had resigned rather than promote what she considered false claims about the company's environmental practices. Each conversation strengthened my resolve and contributed pieces to our strategy. These loyal former team members agreed to provide statements about the company's founding principles and my role in establishing its creative direction. They shared documentation of Alexander's recent deviations from our quality standards and ethical commitments. The most valuable ally emerged unexpectedly. Harold Winters, the company's chief financial officer and Alexander's fraternity brother, requested a confidential meeting through Patricia. I had always considered Harold firmly in Alexander's corner, but his expression when we met revealed a man in profound ethical distress. "I cannot be part of this anymore," he confessed, sliding a flash drive across the table. "Alexander is cooking the books. He is inflating sales figures, hiding expenses, and misleading investors. I have tried to counsel him, but Chloe encourages his worst instincts. She wants the celebrity lifestyle without understanding the business fundamentals." The flash drive contained meticulously organized financial records showing discrepancies between public statements and actual performance. Most damning were emails in which Alexander directed Harold to get creative with quarterly reports to impress potential investors for a planned expansion. "Why are you doing this?" I asked him. "You and Alexander have been friends for 20 years. Harold's expression was pained. "Because the Alexander I knew would never have done any of this. Success and your stepsister have changed him. The company we built deserves better." His use of "we" was not lost on me. Despite his friendship with Alexander, Harold recognized that Thompson Design House had been a collective achievement, not a one-man show. With mounting evidence of mismanagement, Patricia suggested a bold step: private meetings with the company's major investors. This was legally permissible, given my majority shareholder status, though Alexander remained unaware of this fact. Under strict confidentiality agreements, we shared our concerns about the company's direction and hinted at the coming leadership transition. "We are not asking you to take sides," Patricia told them smoothly, "merely to be prepared for some organizational changes that will protect your investments and restore the company's founding principles." Most investors responded with cautious support, having noticed the declining quality and confused brand messaging themselves. Two even expressed relief that intervention was coming before the company's reputation was irreparably damaged. Throughout these preparations, Alexander grew increasingly erratic. Sales were declining despite his aggressive marketing campaigns. Long-standing clients were canceling orders. Design critics were writing scathing reviews of the new collections, noting their derivative aesthetic and compromised craftsmanship. Chloe's presence exacerbated these problems. With no background in design or business, she nevertheless insisted on influencing product decisions. She pushed for flashier, trend-focused pieces that abandoned the timeless quality that had built our reputation. Her extravagant spending as the future Mrs. CEO became gossip within the industry, with stories of $5,000 dinner parties and $10,000 shopping sprees charged to company accounts. Alexander seemed to sense threats gathering, but could not identify their source. He increased security at company headquarters, implemented stricter confidentiality policies, and became paranoid about corporate espionage. In one bizarre move, he hired a private investigator to follow me, apparently believing I was starting a competing company. The investigator ironically approached me directly. "Mr. Thompson is wasting his money," he told me after revealing his assignment. "I have better things to do than watch you teach design workshops at the community center and meet with your lawyer." He terminated his contract with Alexander and provided us with evidence of the inappropriate surveillance. As the final settlement meeting approached, Alexander made one last attempt to resolve matters quietly. His lawyers offered a slightly improved settlement, $300,000, about 1% of the company's value, and a non-compete agreement preventing me from working in furniture design for 5 years. The implicit message was clear: take this modest sum and disappear. Patricia's response was a masterpiece of restraint. "My client will consider this offer and respond at our scheduled meeting." Her slight smile as she relayed this exchange told me everything. Alexander had taken the bait, believing I was finally ready to surrender. The night before the settlement meeting, I barely slept. not from anxiety, but from a quiet, simmering determination. I reviewed our evidence one final time, mentally rehearsed Patricia's carefully planned strategy, and selected my outfit with purpose. A perfectly tailored navy suit made by a sustainable clothing company, paired with the first piece of jewelry I had ever designed, a pendant representing growth and resilience. As dawn broke, I stood at my apartment window looking out at the city awakening. Everything I had built was on the line, but unlike the beginning of this ordeal, I no longer feared the outcome. Whatever happened in that conference room, I had already reclaimed my most valuable asset, belief in myself and my vision. They think tomorrow is an ending, I whispered to my reflection, but it is actually a beginning. The law offices of Caldwell and Associates occupied the 35th floor of a sleek downtown high-rise. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of the city, where Alexander and I had built our dream from nothing. As the elevator ascended, I felt a strange calm. My hands were steady, my mind clear. Patricia stood beside me, her leather portfolio containing the documents that would change everything. "Remember," she murmured, "let them show their hand completely before we reveal ours. The more they commit to their narrative, the more powerful our evidence becomes." The conference room was designed to intimidate with its massive mahogany table and imposing leather chairs. Alexander sat at the far end with his attorney, Roland Pierce, a shark-like litigator known for aggressive tactics. But the surprise was Chloe's presence. As my stepsister, she had no legal standing in these proceedings. "Miss Cooper is here as Mr. Thompson's fiancé and creative partner," Roland explained with practiced smoothness. "Given her future role in the company, Mr. Thompson feels her input is valuable." Patricia's expression remained neutral. "How thoughtful. Shall we begin?" Roland launched into a rehearsed speech about Alexander's generous settlement offer, describing it as more than fair given the circumstances. He laid out documents showing Alexander as the company's founder, creative force, and sole legal owner. According to these papers, my role had been primarily administrative, with some input on aesthetic decisions. I watched Alexander during this presentation. He maintained a practiced expression of regretful magnanimity, occasionally nodding at key points. Chloe was less disciplined, a smirk playing at the corners of her mouth as Roland diminished my contributions year by year. "In summary," Roland concluded, "Mr. Thompson is prepared to offer $300,000 as a final settlement, with the understanding that Miss Blake will sign a comprehensive non-disclosure agreement and a 5-year non-compete clause. Additionally, she will make no claims to intellectual property developed during the marriage and will issue a public statement confirming Mr. Thompson's leadership of the company from its inception." Patricia took notes throughout this presentation, asking occasional clarifying questions that revealed nothing of our position. When Roland finished, she thanked him for the comprehensive overview and asked for a brief recess to confer with me privately. "They are sticking to the script," she whispered, once we were alone in a small side office. "This is perfect. Are you ready for phase 2? I nodded, my resolve hardening. We returned to the conference room where Alexander was checking his watch impatiently. "My client has some concerns about the characterization of her role in the company," Patricia began mildly. "Perhaps Mr. Thompson could clarify his understanding of the company's founding and Miss Blake's contributions." Alexander leaned forward, clearly prepared for this question. "Jessica had good taste and some interesting ideas early on," he said, his tone patronizing. "I have always acknowledged that. But translating concepts into a viable business requires vision, leadership, and risk-taking. The company succeeded because I built the systems, secured the investments, and made the hard decisions. Ideas without execution are worthless." "And the original designs? The sustainable manufacturing processes? The relationships with artisan suppliers?" Patricia prompted. Alexander waved his hand dismissively. "Initial concepts that evolved significantly under my direction. The company outgrew its garage workshop phase years ago. Today's Thompson Design House bears little resemblance to those early experiments." "I see," Patricia said. "And the current creative direction? The new collections?" "Here," Chloe interjected, unable to contain herself. "Alexander and I have completely reinvented the brand. Those rustic sustainability pieces had limited appeal. Our new luxury positioning has attracted a much more sophisticated clientele." I remained silent, watching this performance with detached interest. These people were strangers to me now, rewriting a history I had lived. Patricia nodded thoughtfully. One last question before we respond to your offer. The financial performance under this new direction. How would you characterize it? Roland stepped in smoothly. The company is experiencing the expected adjustment period during its repositioning. The long-term projections are extremely positive. Projections, Patricia repeated, not current results? Enough questions, Alexander cut in. We are here to finalize a settlement, not review business strategy. Does your client accept our offer or not? Patricia closed her notepad. Before we respond, I believe Miss Cooper had something she wanted to give my client. All eyes turned to Chloe, who appeared momentarily confused before remembering her planned gesture. She reached into her designer handbag and withdrew 2 $100 bills, sliding them across the polished table toward me. For your cab fare, she said with a cold smile. Book a cab to your parents' place. Goodbye, Jessica. No hard feelings, right? Business is business. The room fell silent. The deliberate humiliation hung in the air, so nakedly cruel that even Roland looked uncomfortable. Alexander studied his watch, neither endorsing nor stopping his fiancée's behavior. I reached for the bills, my fingers hovering over them for a moment. Then I looked up at Patricia and nodded slightly. Patricia's laugh broke the tension, a genuine sound of amusement that startled everyone. She opened her portfolio and began distributing documents to Alexander's team. What is this? Roland demanded, scanning the first page. The original incorporation documents for Thompson Design House, Patricia replied calmly. You will note on page 3 the ownership structure clearly establishing my client as the majority shareholder with 51% controlling interest. This document was properly filed with the state and has never been legally amended, despite the altered copies you have been working from. Alexander snatched the papers from Roland, his face flushing as he read. This is a forgery. I would never have agreed to this arrangement. Patricia slid another document across the table. Your handwritten note on the original filing, Mr. Thompson. Quote, Jessica's designs are the heart of our company. This structure ensures our founding vision remains protected. End quote. Our handwriting expert has verified its authenticity, as has the notary who witnessed the original signing. Roland was already flipping through the document, his expression darkening. This should have been disclosed during discovery. It was included in the original corporate records you requested, Patricia replied. Not our fault if you relied on the altered versions Mr. Thompson provided rather than verifying with state records. Chloe looked bewildered. What does this mean, Alexander? What is she talking about? Alexander ignored her, his eyes locked with mine for the first time. Even if this were valid, which I do not concede, it changes nothing. I am still CEO. The board supports me. About that, Patricia continued, distributing another set of documents. These are statements from 4 of your 7 board members, expressing concerns about recent management decisions, particularly those involving financial reporting irregularities, quality control issues, and unauthorized use of company funds for personal expenses. She passed copies of emails, financial records, and photos documenting Alexander and Chloe's extravagant lifestyle, funded by company accounts. My client has been quite thorough in documenting the numerous breaches of fiduciary duty committed over the past 8 months. The color drained from Alexander's face as he recognized Harold's detailed financial analyses among the evidence. Harold gave you these? That is a violation of his employment contract. Actually, as an officer of a company reporting to the majority shareholder, he was fulfilling his legal obligation, Patricia corrected, which brings us to our counteroffer. She outlined terms that made Roland physically recoil. Alexander would resign as CEO immediately. The board would appoint me as interim CEO while a proper search was conducted, for which I would be a candidate. Alexander would retain 20% non-voting shares but have no operational role. The company would return to its original sustainable design principles and ethical manufacturing standards. This is absurd, Alexander sputtered. I built this company. No, I said, breaking my silence at last. We built it together. Then you tried to steal it. There is a difference. Chloe finally grasped what was happening. You cannot do this to us. Do you know who I am, who we are in this industry? Patricia regarded her with clinical detachment. Miss Cooper, you have no standing in these proceedings. However, we have documented $62,000 in personal expenses you charged to company accounts without authorization. My client is prepared to address that matter separately unless a prompt repayment plan is established. Chloe turned to Alexander, expecting him to defend her, but he was engrossed in whispered conversation with Roland. The lawyer's grave expression told the whole story. Their position was crumbling. After 20 minutes of legal consultation, Roland requested a 24-hour recess to consider our terms. Patricia agreed, but added one stipulation. An immediate board meeting would be called to disclose the ownership revelation and suspend any major company decisions pending resolution. As we prepared to leave, I paused at the door and turned back. "Keep the cab fare, Chloe. I drove myself today, and I will be driving myself from now on." In the elevator, descending to the lobby, Patricia finally allowed herself a satisfied smile. "That went even better than expected. Did you see Roland's face when he verified the incorporation documents?" "What happens now?" I asked, still processing the dramatic shift in power. "Now Alexander scrambles to salvage what he can. He will likely accept our terms with minor modifications to save face. By this time next week, you will be back in your rightful position." As we stepped out into the bright afternoon sunlight, I felt the weight of months of anxiety and betrayal begin to lift. The company would survive. My designs would continue, and most importantly, I had reclaimed my voice and my value. "You know what the strangest part is?" I told Patricia as we walked to our cars. "I should hate them both, but mostly I feel sorry for them. They thought they were stealing a furniture company, but they did not understand what actually made it valuable." Patricia nodded thoughtfully. "That is often the case with theft. People take the object, but miss the essence." As predicted, Alexander's team contacted us the following morning to accept our terms with only minor adjustments to the financial transition plan. Within 48 hours, the board voted to remove him as CEO and appointed me as his interim replacement. The company announcement cited a mutual decision to pursue separate creative visions and a return to founding principles. Chloe disappeared from public view immediately after the settlement, reportedly returning to New York. Alexander gave one final interview, claiming the transition was his idea all along, that he had accomplished his goals for the company and was ready for new challenges. Nobody in the industry believed him, but the fiction allowed for a smoother transition. As for me, I drove directly from the attorney's office to our manufacturing facility. There were relationships to restore, designs to rebuild, and a company culture to heal. The true work was just beginning. The morning after the settlement, I walked into Thompson Design House headquarters for the first time in nearly a year. Employees stopped mid-conversation as I crossed the lobby, their expressions ranging from shock to tentative smiles. Harold met me at the elevator, offering a firm handshake that conveyed both professional respect and personal apology. "The executive team is assembled in the conference room," he said. "There are quite a few new faces since your time." I nodded, straightening my shoulders. "Then let us make proper introductions." The next hours were a blur of meetings, revelations, and difficult conversations. Some of Alexander's hires were clearly uncomfortable with the sudden leadership change. Others seemed relieved. I made no sweeping declarations or dramatic firings. Instead, I listened, asked questions, and took careful notes on how the company culture had transformed in my absence. The changes were substantial. Our commitment to sustainable materials had been compromised by cost-cutting measures. Our master craftspeople had been marginalized in favor of mass production techniques. The warm, collaborative environment had given way to a hierarchical structure with little transparency between departments. "Our first priority is stabilizing operations," I told the executive team. "No more conflicting directives or shifting priorities. We return to our core principles: sustainability, quality, and thoughtful design that stands the test of time." Over the following weeks, I worked 16-hour days, rebuilding what had been damaged. I met personally with our artisan partners, many of whom Alexander had alienated with payment delays and unreasonable demands. I reviewed every product in our current catalog, identifying which pieces remained true to our standards and which needed to be discontinued. The financial situation was worse than I had anticipated. Alexander's push for rapid expansion had left us overextended with costly leases on showrooms in locations that did not align with our customer base. His luxury repositioning had alienated our core customers while failing to attract enough new ones to compensate. With Harold's help, I developed a recovery plan focusing on our strengths. We would scale back to our most successful product lines, reinvest in quality materials, and rebuild relationships with the sustainable suppliers who had been with us from the beginning. Marketing would highlight the craftsmanship and environmental benefits that had always differentiated our brand. The board approved my plan with cautious optimism. 2 members resigned, having been Alexander's personal friends more than true believers in the company mission. I replaced them with industry veterans who understood the value of ethical business practices and long-term thinking. 3 months into this rebuilding process, I received an unexpected visitor. Lisa Fairchild, the design journalist who had first featured our shelving system years ago, requested an interview about the company's return to its roots. Her recent articles had critically questioned the changes under Alexander's leadership, noting the declining quality and confused brand identity. "Be honest with me," she said once we were seated in my office. "How bad was it behind the scenes?" I considered my response carefully. The industry was full of rumors about the dramatic settlement and leadership change. I could easily paint Alexander and Chloe as villains, confirming the most salacious speculations. Instead, I chose a different path. Every company faces growing pains and occasional detours from its core mission, I replied. We explored a different direction that ultimately did not align with our founding principles. Now we are recommitting to what made Thompson Design House special from the beginning: sustainable materials, thoughtful design, and furniture built to become heirlooms rather than disposable goods. Lisa seemed disappointed by my diplomatic answer, but respected it. Her resulting article focused on the company's renewed dedication to craftsmanship rather than the personal drama behind the transition. This set the tone for our public narrative moving forward, looking ahead rather than dwelling on past conflicts. 6 months after reclaiming my position, we launched a new collection I had designed during my exile. The pieces combined the warmth of natural materials with clean, timeless lines that could adapt to changing tastes. Each item included elements that could be repaired or replaced over time, reducing waste and extending the furniture's lifespan. The collection was a critical and commercial success, selling out its initial production run in 2 weeks. Design blogs praised its thoughtful functionality and returned to authentic craft values. More importantly, it brought back customers who had drifted away during Alexander's tenure, relieved to see the company returning to its roots. As the company stabilized, I gradually reduced my hours from the initial emergency pace to a more sustainable schedule. This allowed me to finally process the emotional aftermath of the betrayal and divorce. I began seeing a therapist who specialized in recovery from narcissistic relationships, unpacking the patterns that had made me vulnerable to Alexander's manipulation. I also reconnected with friends I had neglected during the crisis, including my oldest friend, Grace, who had tried to warn me about Chloe's intentions. "I should have listened to you," I admitted during a long, overdue dinner. Grace shook her head. "You wanted to believe the best about people you loved. That is not a character flaw, Jessica. It is what makes you who you are." On the 1-year anniversary of the settlement meeting, I received an unexpected message from my mother. Chloe had contacted her asking for money. Apparently, after Alexander lost his position in company housing, he had quickly lost interest in Chloe as well. Their engagement had imploded within weeks, leaving Chloe without the wealthy husband or glamorous lifestyle she had schemed to acquire. "She is working as a sales assistant at a department store in New Jersey," my mother reported. "James wants to help her financially, but I thought you should know first." My immediate reaction surprised me. Instead of satisfaction at Chloe's downfall, I felt a complex mix of emotions: lingering hurt, faded anger, and unexpected compassion. "Tell James he should help his daughter if he wants to," I told my mother. "Her choices and their consequences are her journey, not mine." 2 weeks later, I encountered Chloe directly. I was leaving a restaurant after a business dinner when I spotted her across the street struggling with shopping bags at a bus stop. She looked different, her designer clothes replaced by practical retail attire, her confident posture diminished. For a moment, I considered walking in the opposite direction. Instead, I crossed the street. "Hello, Chloe?" She froze, her expression cycling through shock, embarrassment, and defensiveness. "Come to gloat?" she asked, chin raised in defiance despite her circumstances. "Actually, I was going to offer you a ride," I replied. "It is starting to rain." The unexpected kindness seemed to deflate her. "Why would you help me after what I did?" I considered the question seriously. Because holding on to anger takes energy, I would rather invest elsewhere. And because despite everything, we were family once. The ride to her small apartment was mostly silent. As she gathered her bags to exit the car, she hesitated. For what it is worth, I am sorry. Not that you would believe me. Maybe, maybe not, I answered truthfully. But I hope you find what you are actually looking for, Chloe. The things you took from me never seemed to make you happy. I drove away without looking back, feeling a lightness I had not expected. The encounter brought closure to a chapter that had been left unfinished in the legal proceedings. Today, Thompson Design House is thriving again. We are smaller than during Alexander's expansion, but more profitable and true to our founding vision. I legally changed the company name to Blake Designs, removing the last vestige of my connection to Alexander. Our workshops now include training programs for young craftspeople, ensuring traditional woodworking skills continue into the next generation. As for me, I have found my voice again, both as a designer and as a woman. The betrayal that once defined my days has faded into a valuable lesson about self-worth and resilience. I learned that my value was never dependent on Alexander's validation or Chloe's approval. It existed in my creativity, my integrity, and my capacity to rebuild from ruins. The most important discovery was learning to trust myself again, to recognize that the red flags I ignored were actually my intuition trying to protect me. Now I listen to that inner voice first, before any external opinions. Sometimes I think about the young couple who started a furniture business in a garage full of dreams and mutual respect. That story had a different ending than I expected, but perhaps a more meaningful one. Instead of sharing success with a partner who valued me, I had to lose everything to discover I was enough on my own. If you have ever been betrayed by someone you trusted or had something precious stolen from you, you know that the greatest victory is not in revenge, but in rebuilding. The real CEO of your life has always been you. I would love to hear in the comments if you have ever had to start over after a betrayal and what helped you find your strength again. Please like and subscribe if this story resonated with you, and share it with someone who might need to be reminded of their own power. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember, sometimes losing what you thought you wanted opens the door to what you truly deserve.